Jak and Daxter: The Lost Frontier is the sixth entry in the Jak and Daxter franchise, and it's easily the most divisive. It sees Jak, Daxter, and Kira out on a mission to find more eco after the world's supply is run low. Being that eco is the lifeblood of creation, that's a pretty existential threat, and The Lost Frontier brings the original game's focus on ecology, pun intended, back to the forefront. You've got your unscrupulous villains upsetting the world's balance for their own gain, you've got heroes trying to set that balance right. It's pretty simple stuff with some metaphysical flair for good measure. It's just like the precursor legacy, only, lesser. The intentions here are commendable, and I appreciate the return to a brighter, more colorful high adventure after Jak 2 and 3's doom and gloom, but the actual writing just ain't all there. The plot is mostly a MacGuffin hunt, but still features boatloads of convolutions and contrivances despite that. Character motivations are needlessly complex, but somehow still lacking in depth. The whole game operates on this hazy, dreamlike logic, where you can fill in the gaps with your own rationale if you really want, but it feels unfinished. Like there were meant to be several more, much longer dialogue and exposition scenes than this. The end result isn't entirely inscrutable, but it's rife with continuity errors and glaring inconsistencies. There are plenty examples, but the most egregious is Jak's transformation into a sky pirate. At the game's offset, you're briefly led to believe the sky pirates are a villainous bunch. I mean, they do kidnap Kira and the MacGuffin. But after a few bouts of life or death combat, you just start working with them, almost completely without transition, and you start doing bonus missions where you assault and raid supply ships like it's nothing. Kira doesn't really have any objections to this, despite being the one who was, kidnapped. It feels like utter lunacy, and it sets the tone for the whole narrative. Twists are delivered in comically melodramatic fashion with no setup. Characters switch allegiances and reveal their cards without any in-universe impetus. The Lost Frontier is obsessed with delivering Hollywood-style writing at the cost of sensible characterization. But if you're determined to take a see-no-evil approach, there is honestly a lot of good here. It's cool to see The Lost Frontier return to the series' ecological roots with a fight against corruptive, exploitative forces who want to throw life's very essence out of balance. It's cool to see sky pirates just in general, and it's cool to see high concept world building like The Brink, a section of reality itself that was never completed. You're combating the end of the world at the literal end of the world. That's some good romance. But again, the end result is just miserable. The gameplay thankfully fares much better. It's a return to the precursor legacy's platforming focus, a proper hop and bop romp. You get rich environmental variety, a host of new platforming powers, and some simple flow-based combat. None of the playtime feels wasted or obligatory. You're always leaping across chasms of lava or fleeing from mad buzzsaw-wielding robots or battling big evil apes, and the design itself matches this adventurous exuberance. The various platforming powers give us some surprisingly witty puzzles where you naturally build and recall their functional associations. The boss battles have dead simple patterns which still manage to be challenging thanks to the limited mechanics. There are side paths with ammo and damage upgrades, optional collectibles that require real pathfinding. Some presentational jankiness aside, it's good stuff. But that's just one half the equation. The Lost Frontier's big, unique gimmick is aerial combat, and it's not lazy work. The core design is pretty solid, requiring both reactive and strategic monitoring of multiple factors. At a base level, you've got multiple weapon types and multiple ability mods you can apply to change the functionality and stats of your plane, but the different planes also have different slot configurations, and you get an effectiveness bonus depending where you put your upgrades. This is a game where thinking about your loadout has genuine advantages, and you can even steal from other planes to obtain new upgrades. There's a good mix of both gameplay styles to boot. It never feels like the platforming takes a backseat to the flying, but there's no shortage of flying either. The Lost Frontier is also mercifully light on minigames, save for a few bits with Daxter that are not exactly agonizing, but supremely forgettable. Overall, it's a pretty good showing if you can forgive some exceptional jank and utterly trivial side quests, like beyond trivial. So when you tally up comically incoherent storytelling, high concept, high adventure, and simplistic platforming pleasantries, what do you get? Well, you get a colorful 3D action platformer with bad writing. That's what I've been saying, and I think it checks out. There are considerable flaws here, with the characterization and world building in particular being immensely underbaked, but it still never feels cheap or poorly produced. This is a would-be adventure epic, which falls just short in its storytelling, but it's still more of a sequel to the precursor legacy than Jak 2 and 3 ever were.